Nobody expected Luca Marini to do this. Honda walked into Le Mans on Friday, May 8, 2026, and dropped a lap time that made every Ducati engineer on pit lane stare at the monitor twice. The timing screen showed 1 minute and 30.857 seconds to take the top spot. Marquez rode the factory Ducati that is supposed to be the most dominant machinery on the grid and finished 9th. If you follow MotoGP, you already know how unusual that sentence sounds. The result is not a rumor or a wet weather fluke. The event happened on a perfectly clear and sunny morning in France, and the paddock is still catching its breath. Perfect blue skies hung over Le Mans Bugatti Circuit for a 45-minute opening practice session sitting at the front of the race weekend. This was the last guaranteed rain-free running before heavy precipitation moved in to swallow the rest of the schedule. Every rider and engineer and data analyst inside that paddock understood the session carried extra weight. It represented the one shot at meaningful slick tire data. Teams needed setup work and baseline lap times and an understanding of how the bike handles the circuit without a soaked track surface. The stakes inside those garages from the moment the session went live were enormous. For most of those 45 minutes, the timing sheet looked precisely like you would predict. Fabio Di Giannantonio on the VR46 Ducati controlled the top position for the vast majority of the session. He was consistent and fast while operating at the level a Ducati on an optimal track surface should operate at. The Italian held that position while riders cycled through different tire strategies. Most observers probably settled into the familiar assumption of Ducati up front with championship contenders close behind. Honda completely dismantled that assumption when the final 6 minutes arrived. Following a post-race test in Jerez, the Japanese manufacturer showed up at Le Mans with a new aerodynamic package built for the RC213V. This was a proper and test-validated aero development that Marini and his Honda HRC squad had been working toward all week. Marini headed out on a fresh medium rear tire in those closing minutes, and every component of that new package fired correctly. Corner entry and mid-corner stability and overall aerodynamic load all worked together perfectly. The fast lap materialized sector by sector, dropping Di Giannantonio to 4th while Marini took over the top position. The brand has watched Ducati dominate the paddock for years. The RC213V stopped being a title-winning weapon, and the gap between Honda and the sharp end of the field became one of the defining storylines of the sport. A standard opening practice session was never going to feature a Honda on top with things the way they were. But with new aero parts and a rider who executed a perfect final lap, Honda topped the field. The commercial and competitive weight of that result is considerable because they placed 2 bikes in the top 3 at the same time. This brings us to a Frenchman the Le Mans crowd truly adores. Johann Zarco was born in France and was racing in front of his home crowd. The rider who won the identical race 12 months ago at the 2025 French Grand Prix now competes on the Castrol Honda LCR machine. Zarco crossed the line in 3rd this morning, finishing 0.252 seconds behind Marini. That result would already generate noise in the paddock, but the detail buried inside it makes the number genuinely striking. Zarco set his fastest lap of the morning to add to a brilliant overall performance. He had 19 laps of wear on a medium rear compound, and the Frenchman still dragged a top 3 lap time out of it. That is a rider in total harmony with a motorcycle that is finally working the way it should. Thousands of fans in the grandstands at Le Mans waved French flags and screamed for their local hero after getting exactly what they came to see. Pedro Acosta cannot be overlooked here either. The Red Bull KTM rider crossed the line in 3rd place, finishing 0.208 seconds behind Marini. That gap comes down to 1 corner or 1 braking point or 1 small push off the exit of a fast sweeper. Acosta keeps proving why every serious voice in the paddock considers him the most electric young talent on the grid right now. KTM heads into a rain-heavy weekend with a second-place finish to build on. On a different morning, Acosta would have led the conversation, but Honda took that space without apology today. Marquez finished 9th on the factory Ducati. The man who carries the weight of 9 World Championship titles every time he pulls on his helmet ended up plus 0.531 seconds behind the session leader. The number lands hard for anyone who has tracked his career. Joining the Ducati Lenovo factory squad was supposed to be the final piece of pairing the best rider with the best bike. The logic has held on many occasions this season, but it failed on Friday morning at Le Mans. 8 riders found more pace. You can run through explanations like conservative setup or experimental configurations or tire management strategy for later in the weekend. None of those explanations changes the number sitting next to his name when the session closed. The full picture inside the Ducati camp is worse than simply Marquez. Francesco Bagnaia is the former MotoGP world champion and finished 18th. He did this on what might be the only rain-free session of the weekend on a circuit where Ducati machinery should be comfortable. Paddock analysts suggested both factory riders likely ran the new chassis they debuted at the Jerez test to deliberately sacrifice slick tire pace and gather development data points. The strategy makes sense on paper, but Honda still outran them with new Aero on the same track in the same conditions at the same time. The contrast between those two outcomes is sharp. Marco Bezzecchi leads the 2026 MotoGP World Championship standings and arrived at Le Mans as the title contender the entire field is chasing. Aprilia's championship leader finished 14th on Friday morning. This is far from a catastrophe in pure championship points terms, but it is nowhere near where the top of the standings wants to be when the weather is about to slam the optimal window shut for the rest of the weekend. His title lead does not evaporate from one practice session. Nobody inside the paddock is dismissing the possibility that Honda's sudden momentum could shift their trajectory for the remainder of the season heading into summer. The rain forecast reshapes what opening practice data is actually worth to each team heading forward. Honda's engineers walked away from the session holding a full and clean data set from a flawless Le Mans circuit with their new Aero package running during a time attack. The information does not expire when the rain arrives. Setup baselines and aerodynamic load feedback and balance characteristics across different corners all get fed into wet condition configuration decisions. Ducati and Aprilia are working from a session where their top riders either deliberately held back or genuinely got outpaced. They go into the wet weekend with murkier baselines, while Honda's data is completely clean. 2 months ago, framing Honda as a race-winning force would have sounded like wishful thinking from loyal fans. After the morning session, the new Aero is a proven and quantified lap time at one of the most demanding circuits on the calendar. Honda placed 2 bikes in the top 3 during a fair and clear weather session. There are 0 questions about whether the pace was genuine. Marini has given Honda a clean and flat-out performance in a straight fight on a track that suits nobody disproportionately. The morning shifts belief inside a manufacturer, and engineers start trusting the direction they have chosen. Riders carry a different confidence into the next session because everything compounds from a result like this. Marquez will respond and come back to qualifying with better setup data and something to prove. He always does. Going into Saturday, all the momentum from Friday belongs to Honda. The factory Ducati squad goes home to study lap times that do not flatter them, and Honda goes home knowing their new parts work at the highest level against the full field. The French Grand Prix weekend just started as rain approaches the circuit. Honda is awake, and Marini is the fastest rider at Le Mans right now. Everyone in the paddock is watching to see what happens when the new Aero package gets to race day.